Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers from all across the world. Tonight, I wanted to talk to you about some important developments coming from the ground in the occupation entity, coming from Hezbollah attacks on Israel that have been so consistent that they're raising alarm bells in Israel, sirens throughout the day. And I also wanted to talk to you about certain statements that we're having from Iran in relation to the anticipated response and what the developments on the ground mean, especially with the new cabinet formation of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is choosing his cabinet now, and he is appointing people who are warmongers, neocons, many of them who are very much pro-genocide, pro-Israel, massive supporters of Israel, and how that's translating on the ground. Now, Donald Trump usually during his campaign used to promote himself as the anti-war man. Criticism of the Iraq war, criticism of the presence of the United States forces abroad, saying that America first, of course. And now he's doing the exact opposite of what he was saying during his campaign. And we spoke about it at the time when it comes to Donald Trump and the fact that the man has been supported by Zionists who have Israel first in their mind, not America first. And now he's proving to be their little puppet, and by his appointments, a warmonger as well, not a person who is looking to de-escalate. He had his history during his first term as the United States president when he made several decisions when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian issue that were extremely controversial and in many cases illegal, such as the recognition of sovereignty of Israel on the occupied Golan Heights, the moving of the United States Embassy to Jerusalem, an occupied area, and alongside many favors he gave for Israel. And now by the people he's appointing, by their resume, they're worse than the Democrats. They're worse than the going government now, than the Biden administration. And Donald Trump already had several statements in relation to Iran. He had this aggressive approach when it comes to Iran. And all of these appointments that he's making now for his new administration that's due to take place and control by the end of January 2025, these things are indicating that the man could potentially be even more dangerous and more bloody than Joe Biden and his administration. Now, there are many things leading to the end of January and the arrival of Donald Trump. We have Iran and the pending response, and we have an anticipated declaration coming between Russia and Iran. It would include defense. It would be a strategic agreement. No one knows if it will be a defense pact, indeed, that would open the door for both countries to participate in any case where either country has an aggression on it or a war, or needs the other country to support it during any military campaign. These things would be very significant when it comes to the political situation and the military situation in the West Asian region, and it would change the equation when it comes to other countries too, and the position and influence of the United States administration in the region. Now, we also had a statement coming from the Iranian president not long ago that we spoke about at the time, when he said that an encounter with the United States is inevitable, both regionally and globally. When he says an encounter with the US is very likely to happen on a regional basis. That's very much understood because of the US presence in the region of West Asia and the Gulf states. But when he spoke about international arenas, this is where things could be indicating that they might have something coming with Russia and other countries too that would potentially involve Iranian involvement that would secure its own interests and the countries that they have relations with. And we are seeing more and more statements coming from Iran. That's the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Shortly after the Israeli attack on Iran, they started to have statements. It was an initial phase of absorbing the attack, understanding exactly what happened. And then we started to hear certain statements. Now, the statement started by Iran saying we have the right to respond, and we will choose the time and the level of response. We had a statement coming from the supreme leader of Iran saying that the political echelon in the country will be deciding and doing what's in the best of the interest of the people. However, after that, we started to have more and more aggressive statements coming from Iran saying that the attack is coming and it's going to be more painful than the other attacks. And now we have another statement coming from the commander of the IRGC, Hossein Salami, in what was labeled as the Nasrallah drills in Iran, in which he stated this: brace yourselves for revenge. The IRGC chief has warned the enemies. You will receive painful blows. Wait for our retaliation, Major General Hossein Salami said, speaking at a major security and combat maneuver dubbed Nasrallah on Thursday. The fact that they're naming this operation or drill Nasrallah highlights how important Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was for Iran, and the fact that they haven't finished when it comes to their retaliation against the genocide entity following his assassination, following their expansion of their war crimes and genocide, not only in Gaza or in Palestine, but also in Lebanon as well. We will fight you to the end and will not allow you to dominate the destiny of Muslims, he stated. Major General Salami said all falsehood powers have come to help the Israeli regime to force Muslims into concession, dominate their destiny, occupy their lands, and pillage their religious identity. But a study of history shows that Muslims will never surrender, he underlined. He pointed out that the resistance fighters in the region are taking revenge for the enemy's blows on the resistance commanders and youths, adding that they are standing firm and united and inflicting irreparable blows on the enemy every day. Today we are witnessing a confrontation between light and darkness. Wherever light appears, darkness is doomed to destruction. The essence of our enemy is darkness and falsehood is doomed to destruction. Again, aggressive statements, and by every single statement that we're hearing from Iran, with every new statement coming, indicating that the response is coming, we're hearing a higher tone when it comes to that response. And judging by the pattern of behavior and the pattern of responses coming from Iran that are usually very calculated and actually in line with international law, unlike the attacks coming from Western establishment and their little neo-colonialist puppet genocidal entity called Israel, they are very calculated. But despite that calculation, they always intensified. So the attack that came in April initially, it was a historical attack. We did not see Iran conducting such a major attack when it comes to Israel ever. Then we had the following attack that was devastating and more harsh. No notice whatsoever. The United States in the last second noticed certain suspicious movements based on their surveillance from Iran and warned the genocide entity, but it wasn't enough for Israel to prepare. leading to over 90% of the missiles of Iran landing on the genocide entities' bases that are used to conduct war crimes and a genocide and an infanticide against the Palestinian people and cause destruction against civilian infrastructure and civilian buildings and hospitals, and the list goes on. So they are increasing the tone. And many people would, of course, say, okay, well, you have been threatening. Well, they have threatened before, and they implemented their threats. They actually went ahead and followed up. And again, when it comes to the current situation, despite all of the talks that we're hearing about potential ceasefires, none of which confirmed by Israel, by the way. As a matter of fact, the Palestinian side is saying it's all theater. We are seeing no development. Recently, one of the senior figures of Hamas, who's leading the potential political solution or negotiations, as in when they participate or receive certain feedback, he said, prepare yourself for a very long war of attrition, indicating that there is no solution in the horizon despite all of the talks coming. And the recent attempts and statements coming from the United States, especially when it comes to Lebanon, are proving to be the same old theater that we have seen before. They talk about a potential ceasefire, but nothing happens at the end. Now, on the ground, there are things to support the notion that Israel indeed needs a ceasefire. Israel is underplaying the level of damage it's suffering militarily, economically, on a societal basis, in every single sector inside of Israel. That led Benjamin Netanyahu to post an image on X with a broken heart and the logo of the Golani Brigade. When did he publish that, Benjamin Netanyahu? Benjamin Netanyahu published that after the massive blows that Hezbollah gave to the genocide entity near the Lebanese borders and inside of Israeli territories. And this is his X post. A broken heart and the Golani logo. Why the Golani logo? Because Golani is the direct successor of the Haganah. Well, one of the main organizations that used to conduct terror activities in occupied Palestine. It's the most ancient brigade. It's the oldest brigade of Israel, and they have the most experience when it comes to Lebanon, and they have a priority when it comes to any operations in Lebanon. And they are operating, of course, through Division 36 of Israel in Lebanon. Hezbollah took down a whole building with child murderers inside it, with Israeli soldiers inside it, butchering all of them inside of that building. Like I said the other day, they go back to Israel in body bags from Lebanon. And they know that, by the way. Many of them know that. Then, apart from the attacks that we had yesterday, and yesterday, Hezbollah attacked for the first time the Kiryat, the hub, where everything is being conducted from. It has a northern front that has the base of the Ministry of Defense. It has the general command base of the IDF. It has the war room, the war cabinet room. It has the commission to monitor and control the war. It also has the office of the prime minister. It has the office of the spokesperson of the IDF, the rabbinate of the army, and the main command base of the Israeli genocide forces. That's what Hezbollah attacked yesterday, twice, not once. And today we had more images coming from Israel about more destruction in Tel Aviv and in other areas. And reports coming from Israel say that the sirens haven't stopped throughout the whole day. Hezbollah sending missiles and drones on Israeli bases, on multiple Israeli locations in the north, in the central parts, attacking sensitive locations. How are Hezbollah able to conduct all of these operations with the level of Israeli attacks that happened in recent weeks? It's very simple. What Israel conducted in Lebanon was mainly activities for a show that wouldn't necessarily have an effect on the ground. So either Israel does not really understand or know the true essence of the organizations that it's fighting, which would make it severely incompetent, or they're just doing it for a show to achieve an image of victory that they could potentially sell if they would want to reach any sort of solution. And Netanyahu was quoted saying the other day that we cannot achieve anything bigger than the assassination of the figure of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. Okay. If it's the first one, then you're incompetent. If it's the second one, then it's not going to stop any attacks on Israel. And Hezbollah are implementing every single thing that they told Israel they would be implementing had Israel continued its acts of aggression against Lebanon. Because don't forget, Hezbollah started as a supporting front with very limited activities that were effective indeed, because they exhausted high levels of the genocide forces to not allow them to gain more freedom of movement or freedom of more genocide in Gaza. And they told Israel at the time, and the attacks initially were limited to approximately 5 kilometers down the occupied territories, borders from Lebanon. They told them, we are a supporting front, and Sayyid Nasrallah at the time said this is not an all-out war, and our main interest is for Israel to stop the war. And if Israel stops the war in Gaza, they don't even have to negotiate with us. We will stop all of our attacks, because our attacks are a show of solidarity to support our Palestinian brothers and sisters who are oppressed, who are facing these crimes. And we will stop if Israel stops. But what did Israel do? They started, instead of attacking the locations that are attacking them from Lebanon, expanding further. And that was a very big mistake, because Hezbollah told them initially, if you expand further, we will expand further. And Hezbollah are very known to be extremely truthful and transparent when it comes to their statements. With every statement they make, they are always truthful and transparent, even with their enemies. You continue and target deeper into Lebanese territories, we will target you deeper in your territories. You attack senior figures from our organization, we will attack senior figures from your organization. And there are figures who are very senior in Israel that are most likely dead, that Israel did not announce that they're dead, but they have disappeared. Like the head of the 8,200 unit, Yosef Sariel, following the Hezbollah attack on Galilot, which is the main hub of the Israeli intelligence community that includes the Military Intelligence Directorate, the Mossad, and the 8,200 unit. Alongside, of course, them blatantly targeting Benjamin Netanyahu, and Benjamin Netanyahu not declaring where he and his government are conducting meetings. Benjamin Netanyahu and his government do not declare where they have meetings. They have meetings all across the country. They no longer have a meeting in a set location that is used for the purposes of government meetings. Why? Because Hezbollah want to assassinate him, and there are many people in Israel who want him dead. Netanyahu completely tore the social fabric of the Israeli society. He ripped it to shreds, to a level where Israeli Jews are now serving Iran in its ambitions to take down certain figures inside of Israel, or harm Israel, or gain intelligence about them. Yet, he is continuing. And after all of that escalation that came from Israel came the escalation from Hezbollah, up until they declared a new phase. Up until they declared a new phase with the arrival of the new Secretary General. And the new Secretary General, he told them, and the leadership of Hezbollah, that we will turn Haifa into Kiryat Shmone. Kiryat Shmone is one of the most hit settlements in the north of the occupied territories. And now that's the case. Every single day, over 100 missiles, approximately every single day. At one point, it almost reached 200 deep into Israeli territories, apart from the regular attacks that they are conducting in Lebanon. And that's becoming the norm. However, Benjamin Netanyahu is still continuing. And it's not just that he is still continuing the war, by the way. What's happening on the ground is indicating that Israel has longer-term plans when it comes to settlements at the expense of the lives of the cannon fodder they send to Gaza in the form of, people. They are expanding the axis of Netzarim. They are destroying civilian buildings for no reason. And now people in the army are saying that, like we stated in one of my previous videos, I stated about one of the latest articles that came from Haaretz that spoke with senior figures in the Israeli army, including soldiers, not just top figures, who said all of that information, alongside more leaks, of course, and Benjamin Netanyahu trying to blackmail certain figures now in the army, and him having a surveillance/intelligence unit within the army to hand him information that contradicts the standard due diligence required when it comes to the Israeli army. You get certain information, you pass it to your commander, then if your commander sees fit, he will brief the prime minister with this information. So the level of distrust is sky high between Netanyahu and his army, and his new defense or war minister is proving to be extremely incompetent to a level where he is actually ridiculed in Israeli mainstream media because of his incompetence and his lack of knowledge about the objectives of war that Netanyahu himself declared when it comes to Lebanon. He said one of the objectives of the war is to disarm Hezbollah. That's not a declared objective of the war. The declared objective of Benjamin Netanyahu was to return the people back to the north. And he said it was a declared objective. And mind you, there are differences between declared and non-declared. And there's a very big argument that Israel's declared objectives are, of course, not true. However, these are the declared objectives, and we establish the situation and development based on those objectives, alongside, of course, monitoring their genuine objectives and how that is playing out. So the talks that were reported between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump when Benjamin Netanyahu visited the United States, they could end up being true. And the report said that Netanyahu would not get any sort of agreement when it comes to a ceasefire before the arrival of Donald Trump, so that Donald Trump can come, give Israel certain favors. The favor this time could be, for example, a recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the West Bank. The Israeli finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, he said that next year we will announce our full sovereignty over the West Bank. And Trump, he has people in his cabinet who call for a one state with Jewish supremacy, a one apartheid state, an expansion of the supremacy and expansion of the racism and expansion of the genocide and brutality when it comes to Israel. So Benjamin Netanyahu could be relying on him so that Donald Trump can come, give him the favors that he wants, and in return, Benjamin Netanyahu would potentially stop the war, or decrease the level of intensity of the war with certain presence. That's why, the recipe is doomed from its birth, really. And then if that agreement is reached, and we even have a unilateral declaration coming from Israel about this agreement, and don't underestimate that happening, don't rule that out. That's something that can happen. But giving Trump at the same time the credit to reaching a solution when it comes to Israel. And if you recall, when Donald Trump was in power, he was working towards the deal of the century. If some of you remember those days, the deal of the century was basically giving Israel full sovereignty in return for potentially giving the Palestinians, especially in Gaza, certain parts of the Negev deserts. At the time, they had a map, but the overall sovereignty would be for Israel. Israel would dictate everything that happens between the Jordan River to the sea. Donald Trump wants these very big deals that he would hail as historical deals, the deal of the century he wanted, and he, of course, was pressing on with the Abraham Accords. Although Benjamin Netanyahu had a deal on a golden plate from Joe Biden back in April that would include Saudi recognition and a peace process with them in return to a ceasefire and a recognition of a Palestinian state. But now we're even further away from that. Now, the question is, can Israel sustain all of that with the level of damage it has inflicted on itself? Like I said before, when it comes to the ceasefire, there are arguments on the ground that highly indicate that Israel needs to have a ceasefire only if we only talk, by the way, and there are many reasons to talk about it, the economic situation, the societal situation, the long-term effectiveness, and the potential of a continuation of the existence of the state of Israel, because now that's a massive question. Their military, if we only talk about the military, now they're saying at the best percentage, 85% of what they need are serving. A previous report said between 17 to 25% of reservists are refusing. And at the time, I mentioned the fact that we're almost a year into the war. Many people inside of Israel would have turned 18 by now, and they would be at a serving age. And I was wondering at the time, where are these people? They could have made up the numbers. Because in Israel, if you're in the army, you are either killed or wounded to varying degrees. And what Israel says or calls lightly wounded means several limbs have been chopped, let alone severely wounded or, medium wounds. And if you're not, then you're suffering from tremendous problems, to a level where, mainstream media wanted us to feel sorry for genocide soldiers because they ran over so many Palestinian bodies, and it's traumatizing them, how the bodies were squashed after they ran them over with bulldozers and destroyed homes. They were trying to get people's sympathy for people committing the most brutal, the worst crimes in history. So all of the army is suffering. And he's trying to force the people who he had serving to come back. And many of them, they don't even have motivation, because if you only talk about Gaza, they had to go back to Gaza many times in certain locations. If we talk about Jabalia or Khan Yunis, these are places they've spent months in, withdrew, and then had to come back. Why? Because the resistance is not going anywhere. You can go out and come back as many times as you like. And whenever they come back, they receive even harsher blows. To this day, the Palestinian resistance is targeting the genocide forces every single day in Gaza. They're targeting the biggest base they've established themselves in to an extent, which is the axis of Netzarim. Israel's trying to make it an appealing place for Israelis to go to. You know, they've had this article the other day saying that, oh, you know, the Netzarim line now we have, you know, water pipes, you know, we have normal bathrooms, and, you know, we have cellular connectivity, which works very well, and you can even hang around in your shorts. You don't even have to wear a helmet or what have you. And today, the armed wing of the PIJ showed footage of them launching missiles on the Netzarim line. So they are trying to make it attractive to join the genocide forces as much as possible, but that's not working. It's not working with the people who are already there. There's more and more refusal, not for the right causes for the majority of the time, by the way. The people who are refusing to serve for moral purposes are a minority. They exist, but they are a minority who make a statement and pay for it with their freedom. They can get imprisoned. Say, I don't want to serve in the army because the army commits war crimes. It's not that. It's people who don't even have a will to go and fight from the get-go, and who are seeing the progress of everything, and who are seeing that their lives is being taken away for one narcissistic psychopath leading the country. But with all of that, he is continuing. And that is unprecedented in Israel. In Israel, you generally had a leadership that knew its limits to an extent. And now, not only have you have the narcissistic genocidal psychopath Netanyahu, he's putting incompetent people ultimately in charge of the IDF. Israel Katz, the defense minister, because the defense minister is in charge of the IDF. He's one level above. And if you're putting someone incompetent only for him to be a yes man for you, and for you to be the ultimate person leading the situation for your own career, for your own benefits, then you are leading the country to oblivion. And that's something many people in Israel are aware of and were aware of from a very long time ago. However, that doesn't seem to bother Benjamin Netanyahu. That's the dangerous part here. It's dangerous, and it's going to be lethal at the end of it for Israel. Israel is going to be doomed because of Benjamin Netanyahu. He thinks he's going to be the savior. He's going to be the person who will be ending Israel by his actions. But again, he doesn't see that. He doesn't see that, and he's still in power, and he is making powerful changes within the establishment that were considered to be a taboo previously. And he's still getting the support from the United States administration, whether from the Democrats or from the Trump administration that we are waiting to come to power in January. Well, not waiting, but they will be coming to power in late January. And it's not like, you know, the resistance forces or Iran are relying on the goodwill of Donald Trump or anything as such, because even when it comes to Iran, they've had a very bad experience with him. He completely tore apart the nuclear agreement, and he killed Qasem Soleimani. And even now, he is still having this warmongering tone with Iran, although he promised his voters that he will not be expanding the wars, but he will be ending the wars. However, that is not what he's doing with his appointment of warmongers and Zionist genocide supporters coming with his new administration. And these were the main things that I wanted to talk to you about in this live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone, for another live stream. I'll open the space now up for all of you for your participation, questions. Amra, thank you so much for your super. And Glenn Huxley, you said they will cease fire once they're destroyed. It looks like we're headed towards that direction. I mean, I personally, when I woke up on the 7th of October, I thought Israel ended on that day because they had options that could give them time, but they chose the worst options to conduct. The option that would have given them time back then was to use this as an excuse to the world. Look, oh no, we haven't done anything, and these people are attacking us. And so some people would still have some sympathy with them. Of course, the ignorant, not everyone with any knowledge about Palestine and this genocidal entity and its inception. And buy themselves some time, have a review, but it wasn't meant to be that way. They decided to go down a path of total destruction, hate-filled, venomous response against an operation that they knew about before it was taking place. Yesterday, we spoke about the IDF confirming that Benjamin Netanyahu was notified at least 4 hours before the attacks began. So we have more people from within the actual army saying that Benjamin Netanyahu knew. And I said it before, Benjamin Netanyahu, if there are 10 self-destruction buttons in Israel, he's pressing on all of them by continuing. And all of these traits are really traits of someone with serious narcissism and psychological problems, by the way. Completely detached from the harm that is being inflicted on anyone, totally detached emotionally and even from a rational perspective, only fixated on himself and his delusions and viewing himself as the massive savior. He views himself as the modern day King David, Benjamin Netanyahu, and he wants to win points on other figures. Like even when it comes to the army, after they invaded Rafah, he started to say, you see, they told us don't invade Rafah, and I invaded, and look how much progress, although that was debunked from the soldiers on the ground, by the way, who were in communication with ex-figures in the Israeli army. But he's more interested in these points and proving himself right than doing what, you would assume an Israeli prime minister to consider something that is good for Israel. And if you're facing an existential war, what do? You stop the existential war. Mystic Mother, Kid Starver said today he still can't say Israel is doing a genocide. No, a human rights lawyer by profession and a man who legitimized cutting off food, water, and energy of the population of Gaza, a man who says we stand with Israel. So he stands with genocide, he stands with racism, he stands with supremacy, he stands with child killing, he stands with destroying hospitals and mosques and schools and universities, he stands with bombing UN refugee shelters, he stands with torturing people to death and raping them, he stands with running over people's bodies, he stands with killing infants, he stands with all of that. He stands with killing 1,000 infants under the age of 1. He stands with a country that killed over 170 newborns on their day of birth. He stands with all of that. That's who Keir Starmer is. That's what the British establishment is. Rotten to the core, neo-colonialist, supremacist, and genocidal. Britain still supplies arms to Israel. Oxfam and Amnesty told them, stop arming Israel. And when it comes to the genocide, the ICJ, the United Nations Human Rights Committee, every single individual with a pair of eyes and a functioning brain can see it as a genocide, but Keir Starmer doesn't see it as a genocide. Again, do we care what he thinks? I don't think so, but it shows you who he is as a person, as an individual. You're talking about a man who is Zionist to the core. And like I said, his statements in the beginning when Israel was imposing a blockade on the whole population shows who he truly is and what values he stands for. And again, how out of touch he is with the British public, with the millions who have been protesting in the streets. This man can't go to a pub and have a beer in peace, can he? Whenever someone sees him in a pub, he'll spit at him or tell him something and force him out, right? So it's not really surprising. It just shows you who that person actually is. Karen Smetanovska. Why is Israel speaking to the Kurds? They want them to fight Israel wars. Israel is a mini example of the previous neo-colonial powers. They try and divide and rule. So with the Kurds, they will, for example, use, and when we say the Kurds, I mean certain figures. We can't say the Kurds altogether. Many Kurds hate the living daylight out of Israel. But we say certain Kurdish movements, for example, they will use certain sentiments that they have when it comes to their historical positions, when it comes to their geographic locations, how the Sykes-Picot agreement between the British and the French split the whole region and did not really consider these people because it was based on lines rather than history or geography or what's right or the people and their heritage and their cultural communication and who belongs where and people who used to be just moving from one place to another or the actual natives, and in many cases deliberately to keep the conflicts going. This is how the British Empire used to act, and this is how the United States tries to act. The United States had a policy before the Iraq war of having a century of a Sunni Shia war, they called it, to keep the Muslim world divided so that they can be, having fun, taking over the resources of the region. So Israel tries to do that with the Kurds, like the United States and many Western establishments try and do that with some of the Kurdish movements in Syria, for example. So they will use certain sentiments that they have, certain ambitions that they have in terms of sovereignty over certain geographical locations. Say, yeah, we're on your side, we'll support you. And, these people, either they would be so naive and ignorant, or they would be complete sellouts because you need to only see how these countries treated anyone who dealt with them when their time was over. Not only did they ditch them, they made them the enemies afterwards. But even that, it's not going to be successful. By the way, if they think that that's going to say, it's not going to be successful. Israel is starting to lose its closest allies. Israel is starting to get criticism from its closest allies globally. It's very difficult to make it work with any Kurdish movement, by the way. And Glenn Huxley and Angela Brody, thank you so much. And HS said, Mahmoud about to win the YouTube Nobel Prize for Journalism. Wow. Do you think Do you think YouTube will have Nobel Peace Prize? You know, I'm doing my best to stay within the limitations here. But thank you so much for that. Okay, I have a religious question here. Shambali Mahmoud, as a Muslim, do you believe that Allah is sending his angels to help fight against the Zayas? Many IF claim they are fighting ghosts. Your thoughts? Look, I think the people who are fighting against Israel, people who are definitely faithful and full of belief, but they are not people who just, sit and pray for things without doing any actions. I think they prepare very well and they calculate very well. And they take every single action that they need to take to succeed in their operations and make their enemies fail. Now, saying that, as a person who is a believer, I definitely do believe in divine intervention that can come in shapes that many people would view as a catastrophe, like what we're seeing now. You'd have many people thinking, okay, well, why does God, for example, allow this to happen, right, in Gaza? How comes? Ignoring the fact that the actions are being committed by human beings, so like we know who's landing the bombs, right? Now, I believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God Almighty, and Allah, by the way, is the Arabic word for God that also Christians use, by the way. Many people don't know that. His mercy is all encompassing. This is what we believe in. And that mercy can come in certain ways that would be deemed as catastrophes in many cases, because, our brains are limited, us human beings. Your brains are limited. They're restricted to your emotions, to your upbringing. You're not going to necessarily see the whole picture. And by our nature, we want things very urgently, and we want things to work very quickly. And it's difficult for some people to observe these things. But I do believe that there's definitely intervention that we're not seeing. But again, that intervention doesn't come without preparation. So you can't just sit there, even from a religious perspective, and just hope things would be good without taking action. Of course, you need to protect yourself, and you need to take every single means to succeed. And absolutely, you will definitely have divine intervention. I firmly believe that. And thank you for that. That's from Shambali. And we have a confirmation from Iran. Hamid Reza saying, hello, everybody. Iranian here, and I tell you for sure, Iran's response is on the way. And this time it will be huge. I told you. And now we have people from Iran confirming. No, seriously, I also believe that an Iranian response is coming. And thank you for that, Hamid. I didn't think that Iran would also attack back in April, by the way. I didn't think that. At the time, I said I think Iran would potentially use, other locations or maybe other movements and what have you. But no, they decided to do that. And I think they will be attacking. I think they will be attacking. But they will be attacking when the time is suitable. And I said in the beginning, by the way, in the beginning of the live stream, about the upcoming agreements between Iran and Russia and the pattern of calculated responses coming from Iran. And I mean, to a level where people are saying like, we need more. But I do genuinely think a response will coming. I mean, if not, it will be a big problem. But from what we've seen, an attack is coming. It doesn't look like we have anything when it comes to a ceasefire, because the person leading Israel, Netanyahu, like I said, he's out of touch even with the level of suffering and losses coming from the army. Tam McIntosh, Mahmoud, did Erdogan include oil embargo or just politics as usual? Look, he said cut all ties with Israel. He said cut all ties with Israel. How that is interpreted, that's a different story. So you might have certain countries saying we will not supply Israel with certain parts for, I don't know, its army or what have you. And then they will have a back door. Now, when it comes to Turkey, they said that. They said we cut all ties. These things need to be monitored and chased up, you know? So even if someone tells you something, you need to actually follow it up. Check, like, are they doing it? Is it happening? Not long ago, we had Turkish people going on that ship that came from Egypt carrying weapons to Israel. And it was in Turkey. So like I said, people need to continue monitoring. The statements, again, statements are good, but there needs to be actions as well. So that needs to be followed up. People need to monitor what's happening. And I'm sure there will be many people in Turkey who would monitor that. And Tammy also said, Mahmoud, did you know that the Scottish government was the first to vote for a ceasefire but was denied by Starmer? Well, I mean, look, number 10 controls everything, right? And you don't have a say when it comes to Scotland or Wales, when it comes to foreign policy. Westminster controls everything, Downing Street. So there's a different sentiment, of course, in Scotland. There's a different sentiment in some parts. Not that the British government is actually representing its own people. No, it's using draconian laws. It's using Orwellian methods against the population to instill fear in them. And so that they can refrain from talking or sympathizing. So that's not surprising. And Starmer is a Zionist from the get-go, Keir Starmer. Even with the policies, the policies in Britain that he's implementing here, So it's not surprising whatsoever. And clearly, in Britain, like the US, by the way, the majority of the people are still fooled by the two-party system. They think if we want to punish someone, we'll punish them with the most likely person to win, not realizing that they're falling in the same trap. Some of them might have been motivated by what's happening or by the British foreign policy, but they clearly don't realize the game enough. They don't realize how deep it is and who's playing in the background. So for you to support someone, you need to know who's supporting them. Or if you have a certain concern about them when it comes to certain cases regarding human rights. And I firmly believe cases of human rights are the most important things to think about, more than anything financial. Equal human rights, simple, stopping a genocide, stopping war crimes, these things are very important. Even if you have other priorities in life or whatever it is, it doesn't matter where you live or where you come from. But clearly, the majority of the people who voted are either detached from the true essence of how the political establishment works and who's behind the political establishments, because in many Western establishments, the political actors are simply fronts, are simply actors for the people who pay them from the background. And these could be coming from multiple industries, not just one. Money. Talk about oligarchy. Money buys votes, it buys people, it dictates how people shape their opinions through the control of mainstream media. And, we're not there yet. especially in Western countries. We're not there yet. But they would still sell you the delusion of democracy, that there is democracy, by simply the act of voting. Democracy is not just about voting. Who said democracy is about voting? But power to the people is a concept beyond voting, by the way. And even after the vote, it doesn't just stop with the vote. Unless you're happy to elect a dictator for 4 years. And this is what you're doing, really. In most Western countries, you're electing dictators after being brainwashed by mainstream media to vote for them. And of course, the media smearing or crucifying who they see as a threat to the establishment, who could actually be working for the people. And that's the case here. That's the case in the United States as well. And Aini Anwar and Elvira, Gabriela, and Faint Signals, thank you so much for all of your supers. Let's see if we have a couple of more questions today. Abna Dalil, brother, you read the news in Press TV, Germany sending asylum seekers. I mean, I'm looking for it. What did you say exactly? Germany recruiting refugees as mercenaries for Israel. Germany recruiting refugees on Press TV, you said? I haven't seen anything so far. Oh, okay. Ah, yes, yeah, Press TV. Let's share it here. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Let's read through it. Okay. Germany recruiting refugees as mercenaries for Israel, reports. German intelligence and Zionist organizations in close coordination with Tel Aviv regime have reportedly been recruiting refugees from war-torn countries as mercenaries for Israel. Over the past 7 months, the Values Initiative Association, the German-Israel Association have worked to enlist the refugees from Afghanistan, Libya, and Syria. They offered monthly salaries ranging 4,000 to 5,000 euros and fast-track German citizenship. Many have joined the Israeli campaign of genocide in Gaza and the invasion of Lebanon. Reports say virtually 4,000 refugees were naturalized between September and October alone. Germany has proven its reflexive support for the Israeli regime in the wake of Operation Loss of Flood on October the 7th. Germany imposed further restrictions on citizenship applicants from Arab and Muslim countries. And by the way, with regards to that, imagine to become a German citizen, you need to believe in the right of Israel to exist. What kind of a joke is that? I want to come to Germany. Do you believe in Israel's right to exist? Who cares? Why do you care? Why are you trying to dictate what I think? And then they said in early November 2024, the German government introduced a law of compulsory conscription of the very Arab and Muslim applicants claiming intent to fill manpower shortages. Yet the conscription would not involve service in Germany, a stipulation that has left many of these refugees wary of who and where they could end up fighting. Germany's policy of supporting genocide in Gaza and terror in Lebanon was expressed by Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock. Adolfina, her name needs to be that woman, Adolfina Baerbock, during her recent visit to Lebanon. These Lebanese, why do they accept these people? I don't understand. She's a Nazi. And Hochstein even. Why do you even bring him in? The German government's overt backing extends beyond the policy statements driven by a desire to make amends for its Nazi past. Dude, it's your garbage Nazism, not mine. Plus, they're acting as if they're not Nazis. They're worse than the Nazis now in Germany, in the government, in the German government. What do you mean? They're supporting every single thing Hitler supported and some. Hitler was more merciful than Netanyahu. The Nazis were way more merciful than Israel. Holocaust survivors said that. At least they gave them safe passages, right? Of course, with all of the questions regarding that whole period and what we've been told. Okay, then they're continuing about the actual ties of Germany with Israel. You know, nothing is surprising there. Interesting. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't seen like statements from people themselves. I mean, that's something that would potentially be required, of course. But if that did happen, I would not be surprised. Although, like I said, they're kind of just reports, really. Because Israel itself offered refugees coming from Africa easier citizenship if they serve in the genocide army. And Germany, it's still Germany. What? Nazism is still in Germany. Before the unification of East and West Germany, you had in Eastern Germany allied more with the Soviets, who actually took down the Nazis, and Western Germany allied with Western countries, almost all Western countries, the US, UK, France, all of them. West Germany still had Nazi bureaucrats, Nazis running the bureaucracy. And we all know where the bigger Nazis went and who protected them. The new Nazis in the US, in other Western countries. So, and this Adolfina Baerbock, she's a Nazi. This woman supports a genocide, supports the killing of civilians, like Kid Starver. But, you know, Keir Starmer, with the traditional approach, he'll make it appear more, acceptable. But no, in Germany, they're very blatant. And that indicates that these people are Nazis. What a... And it's the only difference is now their Nazism is against, Muslims and Arabs. That's the only thing. But the core is Nazi. And Checklist and Bruno and Faint Signals as well. Thank you so much. And that report came from Abna Dalil. Thank you for that. So yeah, it's not really surprising. Bujar, Mahmoud, would Iran and Hezbollah tolerate Trump giving the West Bank to Israel? I think Hezbollah made it very clear that they're not waiting on any American leader. Why should they wait? If you think about it, really, who are the American leaders for the movements in the region to think about? Like, in essence, the position of the American president should be focusing on America, not the world, right? But from Hezbollah's perspective, well, they prepared for it with power, and likewise with Iran. Why? Because the American administration understands the language of force. They either use intimidation or mass terror to get their way. That's why they support Israel, because they are a far bigger terrorist state than Israel. The United States administration and the Western establishments, right? Notice establishments, not the people. The Western establishments supporting Israel represent far worse establishments than Israel itself. Look at the history and the tens and hundreds of millions that they've killed, enslaved, the nations that they've stolen. So Iran knows them, Hezbollah know them, and they're not really relying on their goodwill, like I said. As a matter of fact, the recent statements that we had from Iran indicate that we're seeing even more escalation coming from them. I mean, talking about Pezeshkian saying that an encounter with the US is inevitable, both regionally and globally. Okay. We'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for another live stream. Thank you for everyone who sent supers, much appreciated. Checklist, Bruno, J. Valdez, Faint Signals from Vega, Elvira Gabriela, Aini Anwar HS, Angela Brody, Glenn Hawksley, and Amra. Thank you very much. And everyone, of course, thank you as well for your participation, support, and apologies, of course, if I haven't reached some of your comments. I'll hopefully have another video after this, inshallah, and we'll have another live stream tomorrow as well. Apart from that, everyone stay blessed. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening, day, or night, depending on where you are. And I'll hope you'll have a relaxing weekend ahead. And I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone, and take care.